I didn't leave when I should have. That's the truth I've been circling around for years. There were moments when the door was open. When the signs were clear. When my body knew before my mind did. And I stayed. Not because I was trapped. Not because I was forced. But because staying felt easier than admitting I wanted more. At first, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like patience. Like loyalty. Like responsibility. Those words can disguise almost anything. I told myself I was being mature. That life wasn't supposed to feel exciting all the time. That longing was childish. So I learned how to quiet it. Every time something inside me stirred, curiosity, restlessness, desire, I answered with logic. This is fine. Don't be dramatic. Other people have it worse. And slowly, I became very good at minimizing myself. From the outside, my life looked stable. Predictable. Respectable. From the inside, it felt like I was watching someone else live it. Days passed without friction. Weeks stacked neatly on top of each other. Nothing broke. That was the problem. I began measuring time by routines instead of memories. Mornings felt interchangeable. Evenings blurred together. I couldn't tell you what made one year different from the next. And yet, time was moving. Relentlessly. I remember one particular afternoon, nothing special about it. No argument. No crisis. Just a quiet moment where I realized I was holding my breath. Not literally. Existentially. As if life was something I was waiting to start once everything felt safe enough. I asked myself a question I wasn't ready to answer. If this is my life 10 years from now, would I accept it? I didn't answer. I already knew the truth. Staying requires constant justification. You have to explain to yourself, over and over, why you're not acting. Why today isn't the day. Why tomorrow will somehow be different. Leaving requires courage. Staying requires numbness. And numbness is easier to maintain. I became an expert at postponing discomfort. At choosing the known dissatisfaction over the unknown possibility. I convinced myself that wanting more was ungrateful. That change was reckless. That stability mattered more than alignment. People praised me for being steady. Reliable. Low maintenance. They had no idea how much effort it took to remain invisible. Inside, something was eroding. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to dull my reactions. I stopped getting excited. Stopped feeling disappointed. I existed in a narrow emotional range that made everything manageable and meaningless. There were opportunities one didn't take because they required movement. Conversations I avoided because they required honesty. Truths I swallowed because they would have changed everything. Each time, I told myself I was choosing peace. I didn't realize I was choosing disappearance. The hardest part is that nothing bad happened. No catastrophe forced my hand. No betrayal gave me an excuse to leave. No dramatic loss justified my sadness. Which meant I had no permission to be unhappy. I felt guilty for feeling empty. That guilt kept me quiet. I watched other people make bold decisions. Some failed. Some succeeded. But all of them were alive in a way I wasn't. They had stories. I had explanations. One night, I caught my reflection in a dark window. For a second, I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different. Because I felt unfinished. Like a draft that was never revised. I realized something then that unsettled me deeply. I wasn't afraid of losing what I had. I was afraid of discovering how little of it was actually mine. That fear kept me exactly where I was. And every day I stayed, the version of me who wanted more grew quieter. Until one day, I noticed something terrifying. I wasn't fighting the life I had anymore. I was adapting to it. And adaptation is how dreams die without making a sound. Adaptation is quiet. That's why it's dangerous. You don't notice the moment you stop resisting. You just wake up one day and realize the weight no longer shocks you, it simply exists. I adjusted my expectations downward without ever admitting it. I stopped asking life for more and started asking myself for less. Less feeling. Less urgency. Less honesty. That's how I survived. But survival is not neutral. It shapes you. I began to see myself as someone who wasn't meant for more. Not unlucky, just not chosen. I told myself I lacked the right timing. The right confidence. The right personality. Anything but responsibility. People around me changed, evolved, moved forward. They complained, they struggled, they took risks. I stayed. I became the stable point in the room. The one who listened. The one who understood. Inside, I was slowly disappearing. There's a moment in prolonged dissatisfaction where you stop feeling pain and start feeling boredom. That's worse. Pain still asks for resolution. Boredom accepts stagnation as fate. I noticed how often I distracted myself. Noise. Screens. Endless scrolling through other people's lives. I wasn't comparing myself anymore. I was anesthetizing myself. Late at night, when distractions failed, the thoughts returned. Not dramatic ones. Not suicidal. Just persistent. Is this it? Is this all I will ever be brave enough to live? Those questions didn't scream. They whispered. And whispers are easier to ignore. Until they aren't. The breakdown didn't look like collapse. It looked like exhaustion. A deep, bone-level tiredness that sleep couldn't touch. I would wake up already depleted, as if my body knew something my mind refused to admit. I tried to fix it externally. Better routines. Healthier habits. More discipline. None of it worked. Because the problem wasn't how I lived. It was why. One evening, someone said something casually, without intention to hurt me. "You're so easy. You never make things complicated." They smiled. I smiled back. And something inside me shattered. Easy. What they meant was agreeable. Flexible. Low friction. What I heard was disposable. I realized I had made myself so adaptable that I could be replaced without disruption. That night, I sat alone and replayed my life like a film. Not the highlights, the pauses. All the moments where I felt the urge to act and didn't. All the times I sensed a turning point and stepped away. It wasn't one missed chance. It was a pattern. A pattern of choosing familiarity over truth. And for the first time, I allowed myself to ask the dangerous question. What if staying is the real risk? That question changed everything. I had built my identity around endurance. Around loyalty to situations that no longer reflected who I was. But endurance without direction is just prolonged disappearance. I saw the future clearly then. Not dramatically. Not tragically. Just predictably. More years that felt similar. More justifications. More quiet resentment. I imagined myself older, explaining my life instead of owning it. That image terrified me. More than failure. More than conflict. More than loss. Because it meant I would never know who I could have been. The moral dilemma became unavoidable. Leaving would hurt people. Staying would erase me. Both choices had a cost. But only one had a future. I realized something brutal. By staying to avoid hurting others, I was hurting myself daily, quietly, consistently, without witnesses. And that kind of damage doesn't heal on its own. It accumulates. I stopped asking whether leaving was justified. I started asking whether staying was honest. The answer was no. I didn't yet know how to leave. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have words. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I stayed much longer, I would forget how to want anything at all. And that would be the end of me, not physically, but completely. Leaving didn't begin with action. It began with permission. Permission to stop explaining myself. Permission to disappoint. Permission to admit that staying had become a form of self-betrayal. I didn't announce anything. I didn't dramatize it. I simply stopped reinforcing a life that no longer reflected me. I withdrew in small, almost invisible ways. I said no more often. I allowed silence to exist without rushing to fill it. I let people misunderstand me instead of correcting them into comfort. At first, the guilt was overwhelming. We are taught that consistency is virtue. That loyalty means endurance. That leaving equals failure. I had internalized all of that. Every step away felt like wrongdoing. But something unexpected happened. With each boundary I set, I felt lighter. Not happier, but clearer. Clarity is unsettling when you're not used to it. Without the old roles, I didn't know who I was yet. Without constant adaptation, I had to sit with my own thoughts. That was harder than staying ever was. There were days I wanted to return to the old version of myself, the agreeable one, the quiet one, the one who required nothing. Comfort calls you back in moments of doubt. It promises safety. What it doesn't tell you is that safety without alignment becomes a slow suffocation. I mourned the life I didn't live. Not with tears, but with heaviness. All the years spent waiting. All the chances I dismissed because they felt inconvenient. All the truths I silenced because they threatened stability. Grief doesn't always look like sorrow. Sometimes it looks like standing still, realizing you can't go back. Starting over didn't feel like rebirth. It felt like standing in an empty room after moving out. No furniture. No identity. No clear direction. Just space. And fear. But space is where truth finally has room to speak. I began listening to myself again, slowly, awkwardly. I noticed what drained me. What sparked curiosity. What felt heavy even before it happened. I made small decisions based on alignment instead of expectation. No grand transformation. No overnight confidence. Just honest steps. I learned that life doesn't restart all at once. It restarts in moments where you choose presence over avoidance. I still think about the years I stayed. About the version of me who believed endurance was enough. Who thought being low maintenance was kindness. Who confused silence with peace. I don't hate that version. They were protecting me with the tools they had. But they were never meant to be permanent. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels uneasy, let me tell you what I know now. You don't need a dramatic reason to leave a life that no longer fits. You don't need to justify your discomfort with tragedy. You don't need to wait until you're broken. Staying out of fear is still a choice. Silence is still a decision. Comfort can still cost you everything. Leaving won't make you fearless. It won't erase regret. It won't guarantee happiness. What it gives you is something quieter, and far more important. Presence. The ability to feel your own life again. To participate instead of observe. To choose instead of adapt. I stayed for years because I was afraid of losing what I had. What I didn't realize was that I was slowly losing myself. And the day I finally stopped staying, not running, not escaping, just refusing to disappear any longer, that was the day my life stopped slipping away. Not because everything became easy. But because it became mine.